welcome to the 5th episode of Rontro, Class of Retro. So welcome to another episode. I want to apologize because I have a bit of a cold, so if I sound funny, that would be why. Today we're going to review the game Streets of Rage 2 for the Sega Genesis, also known as the Sega Mega Drive in some other countries. This game was released in North America December 20th, 1992, in Japan January 14th, 1993, and Europe January 1993. In Japan, this game was known as Bare Knuckle 2, the Requiem of the Deadly Battle. The game introduced two new characters, Max Thunder and Eddie Skate Hunter, known as Sammy Hunter in Japan. Skate is the brother of Adam Hunter from the original Streets of Rage. Streets of Rage 2 has been listed among the best games of all time, which is really no surprise since it's been critically acclaimed since release. Speaking of this game being called Bare Knuckle in Japan, it's on the side of the arcade cabinets in Stage 3. I've always been a huge fan of beat-em-ups, ever since the Double Dragon games on the Nintendo. Now I might be a huge Nintendo fanboy, but I definitely can see that the Sega Genesis had the best beat-em-ups, at least as far as the Streets of Rage series goes. So let's talk about the plot. A year has passed since the events of the original Streets of Rage. To celebrate the defeat of the mysterious Mr. X, Adam Hunter, Axel Stone, and Blaze Fielding met at their favorite night spot in the city. They spent their time talking about their vigilante crusade against Mr. X and his organization. Axel and Blaze had moved out of the city shortly after their last adventure. Axel began working as a part-time bodyguard, and Blaze teaches dance classes. Adam has since rejoined the police force and lives in a small house with his younger brother, Skate. The next morning, Axel receives a phone call from Eddie, Adam's younger brother. Skate had arrived home from school and found his house in ruin. Adam was also missing. Attached to the front door was a picture of Adam chained to a wall at the feet of Mr. X. Realizing that Mr. X and his syndicate had returned for revenge against them, Axel and Skate waste no time telling Blaze. Accompanied by Adam's younger brother Skate and Axel's friend, a professional wrestler named Max Thunder, Axel and Blaze set forth on a rescue mission to save Adam. The soundtrack for Streets of Rage 2 was composed by Yuzo Koshiro, along with 3 contributions from Motohiro Kawashima. Now the soundtrack for this game really was good, and it definitely had that unique Sega Genesis sound. For those of you that have never heard of Koshiro, he did the soundtracks for the East series, ActRaiser, Beyond Oasis, and The Revenge of Shinobi, among the other Streets of Rage games as well. According to Koshiro, for Bare Knuckle I used the PC-88 and an original programming language I developed myself. The original was called MML, Music Macro Language. It's based on NEC's BASIC program, but I modified it heavily. It was more a basic style language at first, but I modified it to be something more like assembly. I called it Music Love. I used it for all the Bare Knuckle games. One thing I've noticed with beat 'em up games, there's at least one level where you're fighting on an elevator. But this game doesn't just have one, but 2 elevator levels. and I just absolutely despise elevator levels because there's just not enough room to fight. Wait a minute, you telling me there's 3 elevator levels in this game? What makes it even worse is this elevator is full of bosses from throughout the game. Gameplay in this game is fantastic. The controls are very responsive. Not only do you get to punch and kick your way through this game, you can do a jump kick, you can suplex, you can throw your enemies. You also have a special attack, but when using it, you do lose a bit of health. Streets of Rage 2 received wide critical acclaim at release, with scores above 90% from most video game magazines at the time. In the United States, GamePro gave it a perfect score of 5 out of 5, stating that against the Final Fights and Super Double Dragons of the world, Streets of Rage 2 more than fends for itself, and concluded it to be the side-scrolling Street Fighter to beat. So it was 1993, so I was 9. I had broke my arm for a second time. That was my right arm. I was riding my bike and I wrecked it. Well, after I'd had the cast off, I had to go get physical therapy. On my way to my first appointment, my dad stopped at a store. I couldn't tell you which one it was. And we went in and bought a Sega Genesis and Streets of Rage 2. So I'd asked my dad if I could take the instruction booklet into the doctor's office so I could read it while we waited. I was looking at the screenshots, I was reading all about it, I was telling my dad all about it. I was pretty excited. I even talked to my physical therapist about this the whole time we were there. So we got home, we hooked up the Sega Genesis, we put in Streets of Rage 2, and we played for hours. It was a lot of fun. It's a good game to share with friends. If I had to rate this game, I would rate it a 10 out of 10. It's a perfect beat 'em up game. So that does it for the review. If you have any suggestions or just want to leave a comment, please do so. Subscribe and please tell your friends. I have been your host, Rontro, and this has been The Class of Retro. Here's a quick tip. On the main menu, hold down A and B on controller 2 while selecting options. You can now select how many lives you start with up to 9, choose your starting stage, and play at the very easy and mania difficulty levels.